Hello everyone, my name is Brittany Heckler. I'm an LPN to BSN student at Indiana State University. I am currently taking Nurse 444 Community Health Nursing for the spring 2022 semester. This is my third community health nursing project and the title is Nurse's Role in Disaster Preparedness and Planning. Populations at risk. The population at risk for this presentation includes everyone. Disasters can happen at any time and any place. The learning objectives for this presentation are: the viewer will be able to define disaster. The viewer will be able to summarize different natural and man-made disasters. The viewer will be able to distinguish the roles of nurses in disaster preparedness. The viewer will be able to recall necessary items for disaster preparedness. The viewer will be able to recognize the steps in the disaster risk management cycle. The viewer will be able to explain myths associated with disasters. At this time, please take a moment to pause this presentation and take the pre-quiz. The link is located below in the video description, or copy and paste the link on this slide in your internet browser. Okay, let's get back to the presentation and see how everyone did on the pre-quiz. Let's go over some of the questions on the pre-quiz. The pre-quiz answers. The first question is, a lifelong threatening situation usually occurring unexpectedly. If you chose emergency, that is correct. The second question is, a serious disruption of community or a society is, if you chose disaster, that is correct. It is caused by the force of nature is the third question. If you chose natural hazards, that is correct. What is a disaster? According to WHO, the World Health Organization, a disaster is an occurrence of a severity and magnitude that normally results in death, injuries, and property damage that cannot be managed through the routine procedure and resources of the government. According to FEMA, Federal Emergency Management Agency, a disaster can be defined as an occurrence, either nature or man-made, that causes human suffering and creates human needs that victims cannot alleviate without assistance. Some natural disasters include earthquakes, tsunamis, volcano, tornado, cyclone, floods, snowstorms, drought, flash floods, sinkholes, landslides, hurricanes, extreme heat, and wildfires. Some man-made disasters include war, wrong experiments, pollution, oil spill, deforestation, fire, epidemic, and environmental pollution. Why is it important to be prepared? It's important for individuals in the community, families, to be prepared in event of a disaster because it can reduce fear, anxiety, and losses that may accompany disasters. If a disaster occurs in your community, the local government and disaster relief organizations such as FEMA will try to help, but it is important for an individual to be ready as well. An individual need to be ready with at least a 3-day supply of certain items such as shelter, first aid, food, water, and sanitation. What is emergency preparedness? Emergency preparedness is being ready when a disaster occurs. It is an intended response to an unexpected, serious, and dangerous occurrence. Emergency planning may involve preparation and planning for a natural or man-made disaster, accidents, breach of security, terrorism, medical emergencies, food, or other essential service chain breakdowns. One way to be prepared is to build a 3-day supply kit. It can hold whatever you feel like you need to have in an emergency, but there is some suggestions I have listed below here. Have a first aid kit, which includes iodine, gauze pads, medical tape, alcohol wipes, antibiotic ointment, aspirin, scissors, and a scalpel. Stock up on water, having 1 gallon per person. Non-perishable food. Bring 3 days of non-perishable food. Include things like canned food, salt-free crackers, whole grain cereals, rice, beans, peanut butter, canned meat, and lard. Also have flashlights, extra batteries, manual can opener, whistle, plastic sheeting, duct tape, wrench pliers, garbage bags, plastic ties. Also, you might want to pack a hand crank radio. Having clothing, personal hygiene products, and moist towelettes is important too, to keep yourself clean when you may not have any water. Local maps, cell phones with chargers, and a backup battery are important too, because you may have to travel to a safer location. So what does this mean for nurses? What is their role in disaster preparedness? Nurses play an important role during disasters. They effectively respond to public health emergencies and natural disasters. Nurses should be prepared to maximize patient safety, decrease occupational exposures, and prevent the spread of infections in their schools, healthcare facilities, and communities during an outbreak or disaster. Some of the major roles of nurses during disaster management include: determine the magnitude of the event, define and understand the health needs of the affected groups, prepare the priorities and objectives, identify actual and potential public health problems at the earliest, estimate resources needed to respond to the needs of identified, collaborate with other professional disciplines and governmental and non-governmental agencies, maintain a proper chain of command. Nurses' role in disaster preparedness continued. Some more of the major roles of a nurse during disaster management include emotional support to the individuals and family, assist in providing safe drinking water, assist in activities of daily living, administration of vaccination and medications, distributing relief materials, gathering the information about diseases and incidents, reporting the details and maintaining records and reports, work like a mediator in between people and government authority in certain situations, collaborate with government and non-government organizations, provide self-care/protection with required precautions, keen observer for any diseases which starts to spread, special care to infants and pregnant women, and also health education to the needy. Planning for a potential crisis. When planning for a potential crisis, organizations usually use what's called the preparedness cycle. It is an important organizational tool that is comprised of 5 phases: mitigation, preparedness, prevention, response, and recovery. The preparedness cycle allows organizations to create strategies to plan for disasters well ahead, so they are prepared for any type of disaster, man-made or otherwise. Not all disasters can be prevented, but through proactive planning efforts, the preparedness cycle can be an effective mechanism to plan and mitigate the risk of life and loss during a disaster. The disaster preparedness cycle is made up of 5 different categories. The first is mitigation. It allows organizations to reduce loss of life and physical assets such as buildings and supplies that will lessen the overall effect of the disaster on any organization and community. The next section is preparedness/prevention. This section is a continuous cycle of activities such as emergency planning, staff training, exercising, assessment, and remedial actions. The third section is response. It allows an organization to respond to disasters. They must use all of their emergency preparedness tools such as emergency plans, policies, procedures, and staff training to respond to any type of disaster. The last section is recovery. It focuses on restoring critical business functions to stabilize day-to-day services and increase capacity to continue to serve their community after a disaster. Resources. There are several resources out there that are good resources that you can utilize to help you prepare for a disaster or to find out information on what you can do to get supplies that you need during a disaster. One of the websites is called the CDC. The second is the Red Cross. The third is the FDA. The fourth is Homeland Security. And the fourth is FEMA. These resources are a great resource if you need to find out information about disaster preparedness. On this page is a list of the references that I chose to use for this presentation. One is from the CDC, another is from FEMA, and a few are from Disaster Preparedness website and from a disaster and nurse role article that I chose. Thank you for viewing this presentation. After this slide, please take a moment to take the post quiz. The link is located below in the video description, or copy and paste the link on this slide on your internet browser. Thank you again.